This is a 2005 Cadillac CTS. It's a 3.6 liter engine V6, and history in this car, this came from Florida, and the guy moved into Kentucky maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and engine and transmission was replaced at some point. All of the harness was replaced, and it was running okay, and at some point started having issues with it was a no crank no start. Basically there was some kind of electrical problem, and dealership changed the power control module, they changed the fuse box, they put the new battery in, and after that it was running okay. I'm not sure when was that, how long it was, maybe a couple of years ago, and now it's having a transmission problem where I had a whole bunch of codes. I cleared all of the codes, and the only code that came back in a transmission control module is U code. The U0100 basically would lose communication with the power control module. Now the interesting thing is that the power control module did not have a code that lost the communication with the TCM. So the PCM doesn't have a code that lost the communication, but the PCM did not flag the code that lost the communication with the TCM, but the TCM lost communication with the PCM. At the time when problem I could only duplicate once. The owner said most of the time what happened when he would back out of the driveway, and it would there's like a little, like this much of, maybe like a, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches was a dropout at the end of the driveway, and every time he gets over that bump, it would, it would trip the code. He had to shut the engine off, turn it back on, and it would be okay. Now when we took a car for a test drive, I did notice there was hard shifting, it was just really has also misfire. It has a P0300, P0306, misfire number 6, but most likely it's ignition related, so that's not a problem right now. He already purchased the plugs and wires to fix that problem, but the transmission is acting up. Now, at the time when fault on the transmission happened, I did not lose my communication with the TCM. With my scan tool, I was able to communicate with TCM, but and I went into the codes, and it had a U code. Now I continued to drive the car. I had to clear the code because I couldn't drive it anymore. It was really, it was kind of limpo mode, and it would not shift right. So I had to clear the codes, and then at the time I only had my solenoids, like a solenoid 1 and 2, and then I don't know, 3 and 5, whatever. I just wanted to have some kind of data just to kind of see if I'm going to lose the communication with TCM, but I didn't. At the time when the problem happened, I was able to talk to the TCM, and and then I pull up the RPM, and then RPM, engine speed, and ignition voltage at the TCM, and unfortunately at the time the code did not I could not duplicate the problem anymore. I was just wanting to see if I'm still receiving the information with the power control module through my TCM, like RPM and the engine speed, the vehicle speed, and I never could duplicate the problem. However, during the test drive, I did notice that I also had my voltage and ignition voltage on my TCM, and there's some dropouts on it that I don't like to see it, and I'll show you now. When I had another data, and literally as soon as I pulled into the driveway, my scan tool went dead because I was stupid enough not to have, I didn't plug in my scan tool in a car, so the battery drained out. But I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So here are the dropouts, and I know this is not a system voltage. I'm sorry, but the glare is horrible. But anyhow, you can see I have these couple dropouts where the voltage went down to 12.8 volts. Of course, that's not gonna do anything, with the module, but it dropped from like here was around 13.6 volts, and then went almost a volt of it dropped down, and so now this TCM has actually 3 So you can see this here and here, the voltage drop. Now, is this concern? I don't know, but it is some kind of a problem that I would say. You can drop voltage 12.8 volts here and here also. Now the lowest voltage that I recorded was at 12.5 volts. Now when I look my diagram, there are three main feed that goes into the transmission control module. That two go straight from the fuse, TEF fuse, the ECM TCM fuse, and then I have this TCM IPC also where it goes over the relay. So I'm gonna back probe my relay just to see if there are any kind of discrepancy there. I'm gonna wiggle the relay. The first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pull this fuse and see if I can duplicate the problem. If I'm gonna be able to communicate with the transmission control module, is it gonna flag the code that I have it. So the relay is this one here. This is ignition relay number 1. When you look the fuse box, it's this one here, which this is the relay, and the fuse is this 15 amp fuse here, and it's the TCM PCM relay right there. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna pull this fuse out and see. I'm gonna have a car running and see if I can still communicate with my TCM and if I'm gonna have the U code. Okay, so right now I have my engine speed. Vehicle speed, of course, is 0. That's just a solenoid, just to see if I'm going to lose communication. And I have my ignition voltage. And let's go ahead and pull this fuse. This will be the fuse here, this one. And it shuts the car off. So that's not my problem. Ignition is 0. Yep. Alright, that sucks. Most likely this fuse is ignition, so it gives the power to a power control module as well. So that sucks. Okay, so after I pulled this fuse, of course it killed the engine, and I got no codes. The TCM was completely dead, I guess. I did not. I'm not sure why. Let me just see the PCM. Got a misfire. Oh, this is a hard code, the salt pressure. So nothing communication wise when we lose. So that glitch, most likely it's not. You know. So I just want to kind of rule one option. You know, if so, if I'm completely losing the power on that ignition fuse, the whole car will shut off. So that would stall completely, so that's not the problem. Alright, my next step was these other two power feeds, this fuse here and 7.5 amp fuse, and this is 10 amp fuse. When I pulled this fuse out, everything was still okay, and I could not duplicate the code. After I pulled this fuse out, pretty much shuts off. This one feeds PCM as well, so it killed the car. Actually, it just happened right now, and I lost the communication with the TCM at the time when I pulled this other fuse. And let's just see what kind of codes, if any, were stored. Okay, so these are actually codes that were in a car before I. This is kind of interesting. This throttle position sensor circuit. This P0120 was in a after I clear all of the codes. This is interesting. This wheel speed sensor was in there as well. This one was in it, and the lost communication with the ECM. So by pulling this fuse, actually I did duplicate the problem. All these were actually in it. All this, let's see, I don't think the computer did. Yeah, everything was actually, all these codes were in the TCM. I like it because So you know, this fuse feeds ECM and TCM, and it splits here. So you know, most likely the PCM is getting the power, but I'm losing, it looks like, power on this pin 2026 intermittently. Because I was confused because there were way too many codes to deal with, and I did you know, clear all of the codes, and as I was driving the car, you know, I just none of these codes came back other than U code, but there are all these codes in the transmission control module right now were in this car when I got it first. Let's go ahead and see what's in a PCM. This is actually good, so I have a direction right now. I wish that I actually had a this is all just the oil pressure switch, nothing else. So anyhow, I'm gonna keep monitoring this voltage, this feed, and make sure this is a good direction to me right now. So I'm gonna dig some more. Here's that red and white. Actually, they are splitting on this connector here. So I don't think I have a problem here because, you know, the power control module works okay. It was a little jammed right here when I pulled this harness out, and I'm wiggling this wire. Let me see. Actually, it's not going to show me the voltage. It's not going to be the... okay. I can't monitor this on my scan tool, but I can still communicate with a TCM. I'm not losing a communication there. So, okay, so I need to open this up and follow this wire and back probe it and monitor this voltage here. Okay, I think I found the problem. Let me look at the these pins are really small actually, but these bigger ones there should be powers and grounds, and you can see that pin has some green corrosion, and this pin has green corrosion. So those are powers and the powers and grounds. So these smaller ones, you know, those are solenoids and stuff, but you can see these two. See that corrosion? That's my problem right there. Now the question is how I'm going to clean it up. These are so small. This part in TCM looks okay. The male side, you know, but these females are, you know, problem. So, you know, how did I get to this point? You know, just by pulling the fuses one by one and trying to recreate the problem, you know, led me to a my problem, you know, led me to a way that I do have a feed problem, and so sure enough, it's there, no question about it. And okay, unfortunately, I should film this from the get-go, but I didn't, and again, I did not film all these codes that I had before. I had to clear all of the codes because I was so confused. I didn't know where to start, and I cleared all of the codes. Took the car for a test drive, and only once I had a U code came back. None of the other codes came back. So, and then again, by pulling by one and checking my codes, I finally got to the power feed that would flag my codes that I had before. So okay, so let's see if I can clean this up. I got a module removed, and you can see some of the corrosion actually internally. Right there, these pins. So I'm afraid that, you know, maybe it's the solder somewhere, or it's internally damaged, and it's not a good sign. And I looked those pins, the female pins, they were actually sitting in between these two rows of male pins, and they were not one that I was really excited when I looked at that green corrosion on the connector, but those things are actually not fitting into any of these male pins at all. So Seems like it's going to be internal to the TCM. Most likely it's, you know, losing internally the power feed, and it's just causing a problem. So I'm not sure if I can get this open and see what's going on internally. So when I look my connector, it's the third row. 1, 2, 3. It's the 6th pin in the third row. That is my power feed, the red and white wire, this one here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. So when I look at my pins here, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Right where we have this little water intrusion, and I can see this plastic is kind of bulged up a little bit, but this is the one. This is my power feed pin right here, and that's the one that loses the power. Most likely loses power internally, not, you know, it's so it's losing the power internally and causing a problem. So unfortunately. Okay, just now I was able to duplicate the problem. I just kind of squeezed the TCM, and I lost my communication. Let's communicate again. Alright, let's put this in the car. I'm going to squeeze it again. There you go. Right there. Let's squeeze it here to lose communication. Right in here. It's not the connector, it's just internally. When I squeeze it here, no, I won't do it, but I think, yeah, we need another module. I'll do it now. There you go. The last thing I want to do now is check my female connectors, and I'm just using these pins, and these two are actually empty. As you can see, those are these four, they're empty, but this is the row that we need to check. So this, and it's number, so one, so the pin is number 6 is mine. So it's 1, 2, so there's a 3, okay, 4, 5, and 6. So it's fine. I can't. This is the such a fine connector. I cannot even really find this. Even the smallest. I will not go through the female connector, but I don't want to, you know, force it in. But at least I can see, I can feel resistance here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and it's fine. See, it's the same depth. How you know, it stops at the same depth. So this one is 6, and this one is empty, goes all the way. And then another one, I think a blue and white, is here. So anyhow, so this is the last thing I want to check to make sure that my connector is not sprung. So that's fine, and I'm ready to do a final call. I'm confident that my TCM is my problem, and it just internally that pin, the 6th pin, where one of the power feeds, it's internally losing the power, and you know, it's causing all the codes. And I was able to duplicate exact problem by pulling that fuse out, and it would flag the very same codes. And so that will be all for now, and hopefully we'll get the TCM and get this one fixed. This is 7 days later. I've got the used module, and you can see there is no water intrusion on this one at all. But actually symptoms didn't happen anymore after I been doing all the checks and stuff, and I picked up the car this morning, and he said it hasn't happened anymore. So I'm confident that's there's a water intrusion in it. So I'm gonna swap these modules and see if we have to program it or not. I hope not, and we'll go from there. Okay, I just turned the key on and installed another module, and we have this lost communication U0100. I'm going to clear that out. It's most likely from the previous module, and then we'll clear the codes. Yes, let's do it again. Let's see, codes menu. At least we're talking to the module, so that's good. And let's start it up. The car is running, no code so far. Let's try it one more time, no codes, okay. Just want to see if we can talk to it. I mean, we already talked, I just want to see if I can put some data on it. Well, so far so good, so let's see if it's gonna work or not. Okay. So far it's shifting okay. Now the bypass and go all the way to overdrive, make sure everything works. And I may not have to program the module. If you guys know, let me know, please. Unless it reflects some kind of codes again, I think I'm just gonna leave it as it is and let the owner decide if he wants to program it. But it seems to be okay. Shifting's fine. Okay, that's encouraging. So I'm just gonna stop and pull the codes from the transmission control module and power control module and see if there's anything stored in it. Hopefully not. And if that's okay, I may not have to program the module. So I'll stop it here. Alright, so I've got no codes in the transmission control module. Let's go to a engine control module. Engine oil pressure, okay, so nothing with TCM, so... Okay, this is probably the problem with the oil pressure switch. Okay, I'm gonna take it for a test a little bit more and it should be okay. So I've been driving this for a good 20 minutes now and shifting just fine. I'm in the overdrive right now, and I'm gonna stop again and pull the codes from my TCM and see if anything was stored in, but this should be fixed. This is the power control module. I need to go back to TCM. The power control module doesn't have anything related to transmission, so no codes. All right. Hopefully it'll stay this way. At least I don't have any kind of, I guess this doesn't have to be coded with the VIN number. It works okay, so that will be it. Alright guys, well I'll keep you posted. Everything else happens to this thing. Again, car didn't act up anymore after like for 7 days, even though I did have stored that the no communication code again before I swap the my modules. So but anyhow, so far so good. We'll see what happens, but there's no question there was a water intrusion on that module. Now the question is, how did water get to it? I have no idea. Maybe somebody washed the engine or something, I'm not sure. So alright guys, well, thank you and see you next time. Thank you. Bye bye.